right, the Montreal Canadiens are in the playoffs, folks. That's the biggest news out of Montreal last night, I suppose, or depending on, I guess, your vantage point or whatever your persuasion is, perhaps you paid more attention to the debate. I think in Montreal, the excitement, though, was definitely surrounding the fact that the Habs beat the Hurricanes and they're in the playoffs. 5 Canadian teams, I believe it is, in the playoffs, including the Battle of Ontario, Toronto, and Ottawa. That's going to be a fantastic series. And Winnipeg won the President's Cup. So, I mean, great representation when it comes to the playoffs and Canadian teams. And Edmonton had a nice run last year. All the way to the Stanley Cup final. We shall see. You would think that of the 5 teams, one of those teams will make a deep playoff run. Anyway, it'll be exciting. And we'll talk about all this in there when we get into our sports. With Cecil Wright, it feels like a Friday, but it's a Thursday, folks. So we will have Cecil Wright joining the show to wrap things up today. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening on the precipice of a long weekend. Always enjoy the Easter long weekend. It's a real sign of spring, and it's always nice to have a day off. By the way, a programming note, of course, we won't be around tomorrow, but we will be back on Monday. Thanks to Vanessa Vandeness on the other side of the glass as well at the control boards. Doing a fine job as always. We will be opening the phone lines between 11 and 12 today, and I will ask you, did you watch any of the French language debate last night? Will you watch the English debate tonight? Again, the timing of this is very strange. I have no idea why they would have selected heading into a long weekend for a variety of reasons. It just doesn't make any sense to me to maximize interest. Now, hardcore people who are into this they'll watch tonight, but I would dare say that a fair audience people they will lose because of the timing of it. But anyway, nonetheless, we'll get into it. So, did you watch last night? Will you watch tonight? What about the Green Party? Should they have been included? Last minute exodus or uninvitation, uninvited, very very last minute. It's strange a bit how that thing shook down. And I think there's a valid argument there to be made that the Bloc, which only has representation in Quebec, has a seat at the debate table, the podium, I guess we'll call it, not a table. And therefore, if the Bloc has a seat, why not the Green Party? So something else that you can talk about. And whatever else you want to get into, again, when we open the phone lines in about an hour's time. And again, thanks so much for tuning in and listening, folks. We very much appreciate it. All right, joining us now is Lori Turnbull, Dalhousie University political science professor. Lori, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time as always.
Anytime, Todd. Thanks for having me.
All right, so obviously I won't ask, did you watch last night? What was your takeaway on last night? Any winners?
I think ultimately Carney was the winner in the sense that everybody was going to gang up on him. At least that was what I thought was going to happen. And to an extent, everybody did. But he got out of it, I would say, pretty unscathed. His French has improved a lot. And so I think the worst thing that could possibly have happened is that he really got roughed around last night and then would be tired going into the English debate tonight, and so it would be kind of like a 1-2 punch. But that didn't happen. He was fine. He made a lot of points, got in what he needed to get in. And because Jagmeet Singh decided he was going to go at Poilievre all the time, Carney just kind of said his piece and seemed to pretty well stand there the rest of the time. Like, he had equal time, no question. But it was like, it wasn't the kind of showdown, the energy against Carney, putting him on the spot, backing into a corner. It didn't have that energy at all. But I would say, if we ever need a moderator to moderate everything for the rest of life, we should have the guy who was moderating last night. He was amazing.
Yeah. All right. So when it comes to tonight, what are your expectations with the language change? Obviously, Carney's going to be more comfortable in English. That goes without saying. What's your expectation for tonight? Something different or much of the same?
I mean, it might get a little bit more hairy tonight. We'll see what happens. I think to some extent it would be the same kind of dynamic in the sense that Carney's the leader, Carney's ahead, and the Conservatives are trying to get back that momentum that they had. We might see a different version of Poilievre tonight. I'm not really sure. I think that, again, like the math around what the leaders are trying to achieve would be roughly the same. Now, that said, Like, if you look at the NDP, that you're thinking about how are they going to try to hold on to something, right? And like the worry is for them, I think people are going to vote strategically because they want to line up behind Carney and to make sure in some cases that Poilievre doesn't win, right? Like the NDP are kind of losing support, I think, for a few reasons, but one of them is that. So I'm looking to see if Singh does anything different tonight. Is he going to go at Poilievre again, or is he going to try to let Poilievre kind of appear a little less scary to people, if that's the situation?
Yeah.
And then maybe that sense of needing to prevent a Poilievre win will come down. That said, I mean, you look at the polls now, like depending on what poll you look at, the Conservatives are trailing the Liberals by 2 points, 4 points, 6 points nationally. But you start looking at the regional polling, and that seems to suggest a more cemented lead for the Liberals at this point. So similar thing, right? Carney has to get out of there unscathed, and everybody else has to make up some ground.
How many undecided voters out there do you think there are? I guess in a kind of a general sense, how many people are there to be swayed or persuaded to change or to park a vote who aren't decided yet?
Yeah, I read a statistic that was 15%. This is a weird election, though. Like I think that a lot of people would have kind of decided on their ballot question a long time ago and then decided who they're going to vote for. This is really shaped up to be a two-party race. And I can't, like, it's hard for me to think, like, who would be on the fence about Carney versus Poilievre? I don't know, right? Like, in some ways there's overlap between some of their policies, but what they're bringing to the table in terms of care, like just the way they are, the way they communicate, the kind of values that they seem to be putting forward, the kind of leadership style, those sorts of things are just, these are very different people. And so I wonder if there's more of a sense of conclusion about this election at this point. The advanced polls are this week. So I'm wondering if people are just going to watch the debate, cast their ballot, be done with it.
All right, really, trust is the big factor here, in my opinion. Who do you trust? And when it comes to Carney, I think that some questions about his business dealings and his business and tax havens and his green ideology, that might be hesitation for people when it comes to trust. When it comes to Poilievre, too much like Trump. Again, these aren't my opinions. These are just things that you hear and that are out there.
Yeah.
Too much like Trump, too many slogans. People don't trust him when it comes to what he'll do to the public sector. So it goes all the way around, right? Who do you trust? Trust is big right now. It's huge, right?
Oh, big time. Especially when people are feeling nervous about what's going to happen economically, what's going to happen with the U.S., what's going to happen to the job market, the value of the dollar, our trade relationships. It's a scary time, and so then that makes the trust factor even more important. You are looking for, like, who do you think is going to manage this? It's not necessarily about the policy platform because we can't predict what's going to happen. It's more about, like, whose leadership do you trust? For Carney, I think the fact that he's got this long and very impressive CV acts as a kind of evidence basis for trust, because it's like, look at all the things he's done. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like, the Conservatives know that, and they've been trying to blow a hole in Carney's trust relationship with voters. And it's interesting because people don't, like, we haven't had that much exposure to Carney. Not that long ago, he didn't even have all that much name recognition in Canada. But now, given the circumstances, he's kind of floated up to the top because of these credentials and these experiences that he has. The Conservatives are trying to blow that apart, call into question his credentials. Poilievre has been saying stuff like trophy titles. But as you said, too Trumpy. Right? Like, it just sounds too much like these are the little alliteration slogans that Trump loves that stuff, and Poilievre is sounding too much like it. On the other hand, Poilievre has had more exposure, more experience. Voters may be more familiar with him. We'll see. We'll see what shakes down. We'll see whether Carney is going to sort of carry any of the weight of the Trudeau legacy and the fact that people have really wanted that government gone. Is Carney able to show up in a totally different light? Like, I guess these are the things that are going to weigh on people when they go in to cast that ballot.
When it comes to Poilievre, he has to be very careful because for those reasons, that's what motivated and inspired a lot of the movement that got him so high in the polls. So if he starts walking it back and trying to change, I guess, his tone, which he seems to be trying to be more moderate at this point, at least vocally, there's the possibility of losing some of your support that I guess because if you change your approach, then you may lose some support. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're totally right, and I think that's why he's been taking the approach that he's been taking. He goes to the rallies and yells the axe attacks and stop the crime and all that stuff, and all of his like kind of core base cheer for him, and that's what they want to hear. When he goes moderate, they go a little quiet. And so when he's tried to talk to like take Trump on a little more, like and be that voice that I think a lot of people in Canada might be looking to hear whether he's saying that. He says it at the rally. He doesn't go over as big. So he's trying to court different audiences, just like anybody who's trying to be prime minister and get enough people, right? So he's saying things in the rallies, then he goes to the debate last night, and I thought came across as quite moderate. And I wasn't I was thinking about that, and I was like, I don't know if it's because this is in French. I don't know if this is because this is very well moderated and no one's being permitted to go over the top too much in terms of time, or if it's just that Poilievre showed up differently and seemed to be more kind of in the moment, focusing on the policies that he wanted to put forward. And so, yeah, we'll see what version of him shows up tonight.
Yeah, and also when it comes to trust, sometimes age plays a factor, I suppose, psychologically. And Mark Carney, I think he's in his early 60s, so he's kind of in that sweet spot whereas he's kind of everybody's dad at this point. Like he's got that kind of that era or that approach. And Carney, or rather Poilievre, is young, and I guess, does age play a factor in this at all?
I don't know. I don't know about that. Maybe a little, but I can't imagine that's a really decisive factor.
Yeah.
Like, I think age of voters sometimes, like age demographics can make a big difference in terms of, we can see trends in terms of like who's popular in women over 40, women under 40, or, same thing for men. Like there seems to be there are trends dependent on age. I'm not sure how much the age of the politician makes a difference. Neither of them are really young, right? So like there's a sense of them both having, some sense of experience that would bring them to some point of maturity. But Poilievre's is pretty much entirely political.
I guess what I'm getting at is that it's a huge difference really between these two people when it comes to Carney and his experience. Well, like you said, his CV, his resume. And he's at that stage of life where he's got all that to stand on, whereas Pierre Poilievre is a career politician, and I think that might be a little bit of a harder sell. What's your take on that?
Oh, I think it's definitely a harder sell.
Yeah,
definitely a harder sell, because Carney, it's like his thing is he's got to come through as the candidate who's like totally not like the others, and the rest of them are. Here are people who have been in politics a long time, but Carney is like, he needs to keep that kind of halo around him that he's had, or this kind of light around him that he's had this whole time. People are looking at him differently. They're not asking the same kinds of questions of him. It's like, here's this guy who's managed economic uncertainty, and he's, that's, I think, why he's had this immediate pickup in support and been able to not only erase the lead that the Conservatives have had, but push the Liberals even further beyond that. I mean, we'll see what happens on that Monday night, but like some of the polls have them winning by a lot, right? So it'll be a test of how much Carney is able to build, as you said earlier, that trust relationship with voters. I think that's what this is all about.
All right, agreement on pipelines and natural resource development. It appears as though the Carney and Poilievre agree on that, at least vocally. That's what they're saying. Again, this comes down to trust, though. Do you feel as though that people might not trust Carney because of his background and because of his book values and his ideology, which has been clearly on the environmental side? So do you think that, again, people might not trust what he says when it comes to pipeline production?
I don't know about that, right? Like, I think the complexities around the pipeline are going to be more, is he going to be able to even get it done, even if he gets a big mandate? Yeah, right. Because it's going to be complicated to deal with the provinces, to deal with all the negotiations that are going to have to happen, to get agreement from Indigenous communities. This is going to be a really hard political process if he gets the opportunity to do it. And I'm not sure that I think that's going to be where the hard part is, as opposed to any issues around him being an environmentalist. I think that's not where the fight's going to be.
Okay, and lastly, the Green Party being uninvited last minute. To me, Look, I just don't understand why they would make the decision at the very last minute. What's your takeaway on this?
So, I mean, I think the broad strokes are the Greens basically met 2 of the 3 criteria in the beginning, and then by dropping 15 more candidates, they didn't meet the criteria to enter. I don't know why the commission didn't tell them that until the following morning, or until yesterday in the morning.
Yeah.
Frankly, I have a whole bunch of opinions about how we should be doing leaders' debates, and it's not how we're doing them now. And I'm not terribly some of the things that have happened in the past couple of, that we saw last night in terms of the overrepresentation of Rebel News and the fact that they took over the entire scrum period with the leaders. Frankly, that's a big problem. I don't care when they told the Greens they weren't participating. They didn't meet the criteria, and the Greens ought to have known that.
Absolutely. Okay, Lori, great stuff as always. Thanks so much, and we'll do it again.
Thanks, Todd. Have a great long
All
weekend.
right, take care. Lori Turnbull, Dalhousie University political science professor. 5 years since the mass shooting. Hard to believe. We'll chat with Elizabeth Smith-McCrossin about this when we come back. The worst mass shooting in modern Canadian history began almost 5 years ago, shortly after a Nova Scotia man brutally assaulted his common-law wife. You know the sad, tragic story for sure. Elizabeth Smith-McCrossin joins us, Cumberland North Independent MLA. Elizabeth, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be with you today, Todd.
All right, so a somber 5 years, I guess some broad stroke reflections, if you will, to start, please.
Well, when I think back 5 years ago, on this anniversary, I just think about waking up that Sunday morning. First thing I do every morning when I wake up is grab my cell phone that's charging by my bed, and I take a quick look at Twitter and the news to see if anything's happened overnight. And I remember seeing, the Nova Scotia RCMP's post on Twitter and being, immediately alarmed, like what's happening. And then just following that over the next couple of hours. And then as things unfolded and we learned about the murders here in Cumberland and Colchester, it was, it was unimaginable. And when we think of the families right now and they're grieving, and it's the families, it's our communities. I don't think it takes generations really to heal from this kind of a massacre, the murders, the lives that were impacted here. So I do want to say my heart goes out to all of the family members because this is every day, I'm sure, is hard for them. But of course, anniversaries are always a hard time.
Indeed,
when people are grieving,
and almost innocence lost, right? For the province, we never thought anything like this would happen. It changed everybody, and it changed the province permanently, I think. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, people went from shock, I think, to grief, to anger. People want to put blame. And I think, as we sort of analyze and unwrap the situation, watching the Mass Casualty Commission was incredible, really. And I still here in my office have the many volumes of the report. And to go through that, I think, here we are 5 years later. There needs to be some accountability, some significant more work that's being done based on the Mass Casualty Commission. I mean, that's what we have a responsibility to do now. We need to continue to support the families that are grieving and support our communities, and really take seriously the issue at the core, which many believe, and that is domestic violence and family violence in the home. And that's where we, as a province, as a people, can make a commitment to change and to try to ensure that not another person dies from this.
Okay, so how do we make that happen, and why do you think it hasn't happened yet?
Well, it certainly hasn't happened yet. In fact, we all know the deaths seems to be increasing from domestic violence in this province. It's really upsetting. And here in Cumberland County, we've had more murders, and at the core of a lot of them, not all, I don't know the details of all of them, but at the core there's mental illness for some of them. The Mass Casualty Commission, rather, has definitely called on the province to improve counseling, therapy, mental health, access to mental health illness. And we're not seeing that. We've seen announcements for money, like $18 million was announced. But if you go through Cumberland County and Colchester, access to that counseling is not available. Recently, I had a conversation with Christine Blair. She's the mayor of Colchester. She's a great woman to talk to about this if anyone's interested. And she is not pleased about the fact that there's not a clinic specifically set up, that if someone needs therapy, someone is ready. Because as you know, Todd, everyone grieves differently, and mental health can show itself at different times. So mobile clinics don't work for things like that. And I had someone from the community of that area, of the Portapique area, say that sometimes mobile clinics would come in, but there wasn't privacy, there wasn't confidentiality. So we need a standing clinic where there's psychiatry and professionals, qualified professionals, Todd, not just lay people. Lay people are important too, but we need qualified therapists available in our community, and we need them available when people need them. And right now, I have 2 people that contacted me in the last month that have been referred to therapy by their psychiatrist, and they're waiting a year. One's waiting. One was told last August that September of 2025 there'll be a therapist available for them. That is not helping. So that's one thing for sure. We need to actually invest in qualified therapists and counseling for people that are struggling, and we need to make sure that we have acute care beds for people that are struggling with mental illness. So I do want to say that. And we need to look at the other recommendations of the Mass Casualty Commission. And I do think, I will say on this anniversary, that probably everyone listening, and I will say myself included, have witnessed domestic violence, either within family or within the community, and it's difficult. This is an issue that is not, there's not a simple solution, but I think every one of us do have a responsibility that when we're aware of it, that when we see it, that we stand strong to emphatically say this is not okay. And I think people need to hear that, whether it's the abuser or whether it's the person being abused, to clearly, emphatically say domestic hurting someone is not okay, and it needs to stop. And that message needs to be sent to people individually, to communities, and then to help them and provide the supports there to say, okay, what is the underlying issue here that may be at the root of the problem, and then provide those supports to those people. But there needs to be a very, very clear stance by everyone and leadership in this province, myself and all other leaders, and as well as individuals, that this is not acceptable. And when we see it in our families and when we see it in our communities, to take the risk and get involved and not stand by and say, well, there's nothing we can do, I guess. Yeah. What do you think?
I guess, sure. I think that if we don't get there now, we never will. I mean, what else do you need for motivation than what we've seen and what we witnessed? The empirical data is there, right? It's not like it's a mystery here. It's pretty evident that if not now, never. That's my take. What's yours?
Yes, I agree. And there's things we can do, at our level in the legislature. I tabled 5 bills this session that had to do with domestic violence and also sexual assault, which oftentimes they are connected. Mm-hmm. What women, and certainly it's not, victims can be male or female, but, a lot of the victims that come to me confidentially are female, and we can start with law enforcement. I've had some stories, for example, where, they'll call because they're being harmed, and, stories like where the law enforcement will say, well, why don't you and the children leave for the night, maybe because there's alcohol involved, and let your partner dry out and maybe things will be okay in the morning. And, the victim that came to me said, why were we told to leave? Like, why wasn't he arrested for harming me, and why wasn't he taken? So how are law enforcement responding to cases of domestic violence? Is there consistency? Are there policies in place? And in small communities, Todd, it is harder for law enforcement because oftentimes the police officers know the people. Their neighbors, their friends, they could be family. But that's why there needs to be very clear, strong policies and consistent response. One of the bills I tabled was called Kira's Law, and that's actually in place federally, where there's legislation now federally where all federal judges have to go through training around domestic violence and sexual assault so that they're better educated when they're making decisions on sentencing. Mm-hmm. And we've asked for that to pass here for our provincial judges. Very sadly, the story behind it is there was a family and the husband killed himself and the daughter, whose name was Kira. So the mom, who was left to grieve, she has been advocating for this legislative change, and she's been trying to get all the provinces in the country to pass this. So that's one thing our government could do, just for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, we're out of time. We could talk all day about this. Sadly,
I know,
there's some, but I think that we covered the high points. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time on this somber anniversary. Thank you.
And thanks for taking the time on this important issue. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Elizabeth Smith-McCrossin, Cumberland North Independent MLA. We'll be right back. All right, recently the struggling genetic testing company 23andMe filed for bankruptcy. Its co-founder and CEO resigned. Now millions of customers are wondering what happens to their genetic data and whether it's secure. Joining us to address all of this is Tony Anscombe. He's a security expert with ESET, ESET, an industry-leading IT security software company. Tony, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time, of course.
Hey, my pleasure.
All right, so give us some background on this company and what, I guess, fill in the broad strokes of what happened here to this point.
Well, many people want to conduct research into their ancestry and such like, and have provided DNA samples to companies like this over time to find out where they come from or what their ancestry looks like, etc., and it helps them build their family tree. But in this instance, this company has hit financial problems and gone bankrupt. And of course, there's this huge question now of what happens to the data that's being held by them, because it could be exceptionally personal data, as you can imagine, because it is, of course, your DNA.
Okay, so tell us about why that is so. It seems self-evident, but what are some of the real security concerns about privacy and what can be done and how this information might be compromised?
Well, the question is what happens once they do get sold and who buys them or for what reason they get purchased. But if during bankruptcy the right of a company coming in could actually sell the data onto another third party. So somebody could buy the company in bankruptcy and break up the assets of the company, of course, and the data is one of those assets. And bear in mind, DNA can show more than just ancestry and such like. It can also show things like, whether you've got hereditary problem. There's genetic hereditary problems in your DNA stream and such like. So imagine now you start getting emails from other companies advertising certain products based on your DNA because they've purchased your DNA data through that bankruptcy. Whose privacy policy are you then falling under? Was it 23andMe's? Was it the purchasing company? Was it the company who purchased then sold on? I think there's a whole heap of big questions in here about what happens to your data and where it ends up. And of course, in amongst all of this, there's the risk of a bad actor getting into that system and maybe stealing the data while it's being transferred, while it's going through this process of being acquired or broken up by the company that's selling.
All right, so immense trust that people put into this type of company. Do you think that people perhaps have misplaced that trust or were naive in what they're willing to give to companies like this?
Well, I think with any company like this, I think there's a service that you're after. And what you should do is get in, use the service, and get out. So, i.e., if you wanted that DNA profile and to know that some of that history, then go to one of these companies, get your DNA profile, and then ask for the right to deletion, and have them delete your data, and more importantly, have them delete the sample that you sent them, because I believe with 23andMe that actually, if you sent them a sample and didn't specifically elect to have the sample deleted, I believe it's still held.
All right. What type of oversight is there when it comes to looking after people's data, and how much responsibility is there, and who regulates this industry?
Well, there is certain health privacy legislation in place in Canada and in the US that regulates this, but I think this is this health data or is this commercial data? I think it's certainly personal data, and I think there's some question on what type of data is actually being held in this way. And I would expect at some stage, if it looked as though it was going to become abused, I would expect a regulator or a government to step in and actually try and protect the data in some way. But I think this is a unique moment in time. I don't think any company has gone down this path and gone bankrupt with this much data of this type of personal nature that necessarily is health data, but not for health reasons.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on this industry moving forward and these type of companies moving forward? Do you think that this might be a real disincentive for people to take part in giving over freely their information and paying for the service?
Well, I think if any other company in this space now is looking and wants to make sure that people feel secure and trust the company, I think I would have some fairly good guidelines on how you get in, get your profile, and how long they hold the information on you about, and make sure that you've got the right for deletion. Now, in Canada, you obviously have the right of deletion because of privacy legislation. But if you step over the border into the US, that's a little bit more sketchy because some states have privacy legislation and some don't. So, my point here is that, I think people need to feel trusted, need to have a company point out what they can and can't do with their data right up front and be very transparent about it.
But I think the reality is you just never know at this point what's been compromised and what has been compromised. Is there any way to fully know what, if possibility, what information has been breached, or what are your thoughts on this?
Well, you can certainly take out identity protection services. So as a company at ESET, part of our internet security suite has identity protection built into it. What that does is trawl things like the dark web and tell you when your name and your data start to appear. This is very specific data, and I'm not sure even now that those services might pick up your email address or some of your other personal data, but a DNA profile is probably hard to pick up in that way. But certainly email address and things like that would be picked up if it got breached onto the dark web. And of course, if it does, then I would expect some very fancy spear phishing or extortion type attacks to happen, because the personal nature of this data means somebody could actually make a very convincing phishing email against you, asking very specific questions or inferring that they already know things, and you might well start clicking links because it would appear that the email is furnished with data about you, a very personal data about you. So I'd watch out. If anything lands in your inbox and looks a bit suspicious, then either contact the company directly or delete it.
All right. So what might it look like? What might one of these emails look like? Would it be a threatening sounding thing, or might it first be appearing to be trying to attract you to purchase something? What might it look like?
Well, it depends on what the bad actor is trying to do. I mean, if they're trying to get you to furnish them with further data, like credit card information, payment, or financial data, then they might it could be that simple of, hey, we've got this data, we need you to confirm this through the bankruptcy, etc. We know this, blah, blah, blah. Could you confirm your account and ask, confirm your payment details, etc. Or it could be right at the other end, and I hope it does. I hope neither of these happen, but I certainly hope the second one doesn't happen. If somebody's managed to do DNA matching across multiple user profiles, you could be linking families that maybe aren't linked normally, or maybe somebody's got a history of diabetes in a family, and maybe the DNA profile has more on it than we realised. And if that falls into the wrong hands, then suddenly somebody might be asking questions or trying to extort money, so they don't disclose it.
Okay, can at some point you inform law enforcement, or might they? What might be some of your steps to protect yourself if in fact this happens to you?
Yeah, I mean, if you think it is happening, certainly contact law enforcement, but you're going to need a cyber law enforcement office. Make sure when you do report it that they understand this is a cyber issue, because I think that would be beyond. Maybe your local law enforcement might not quite grasp the complexity of it because it's slightly out of the norm. So I would contact a cyber law enforcement agency. But one thing I would do in this particular instance, if you can still get to your 23andMe data, I would go on and delete the account. You have the right of deletion. I would go and delete the account and delete all the data associated with it. And I would make sure the company understands you want your DNA sample to be destroyed, because if they are still holding that, then it should be destroyed. And if you're using another company to do something like this, personally, I would go off and probably delete accounts. If I'm not using them actively, I would delete the accounts and clear up those snippets of information being left all over the internet.
Tony, appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks so much.
Hey, my pleasure. Anytime.
All right, take care. Tony Anscombe with ESET, an industry-leading IT security software company. We'll be right back. All right, April is Oral Health Month, and joining me here in studio is Bryce Wylde, known as Canada's leading alternative health expert and published author. Bryce, thanks for joining me.
Todd, great to be in studio with you, sir.
All right, so what else? What other descriptions might we include when it comes to you?
I've been in 25 years. I've been in clinical practice, Toronto, born and raised. And in that time, we were taught early days in school, during a physical examination, which we do on indication, look in the mouth. Yeah. And this derives actually a little bit from traditional Chinese medicine. So we're looking at the tongue, and we're looking at, the oral state of health in the mouth, because it translates to the rest of the body.
Right.
We did a recent survey across Canada, just over 1,500 people. And the survey concluded that about 50% of us have no idea that good oral hygiene translates to heart and brain health.
Wow.
So in Nova Scotia, unfortunately, about 1 in 3 Nova Scotians, floss daily. And that translates to even less, 1 in 5 for the 18 to 24-year-olds. And again, nearly 50% of the East Coast doesn't even understand that relationship to the heart. 70% don't know that there's a relationship directly to the brain. So how does this all work? So there are bacteria that we've heard of. Maybe some of us remember our hygienists say, the reason you got to brush and floss is because of this P. gingivalis. That's notorious for causing cavities, right? It releases acid, and we get, and dentists love to drill and fill. But there's stuff between the teeth. And that stuff, including, fucosibacteria and P. gingivalis, can escape into your general circulation and land itself in your brain, causing Alzheimer's, and even in your heart, causing things like stroke and cardiovascular disease.
Why do you think this has been so overlooked?
It's a great question that we're trying to crack the code on. We don't have a solid answer for you. All we know is that it takes 60 to 90 seconds to reverse it and flip the coin on this, right? No, everyone's got that, and we're probably, by doing that every single day, doesn't matter what time, by the way, we're probably seeing an equivalent of 6 to 7 healthy years added onto your life. This also, by the way, helps to prevent things like diabetes.
Wow.
So as a broadcaster, I would challenge the notion that probably more than most people what starts in the mouth doesn't stay in the mouth. It gets out there. That's the same and true for the body. What starts in the mouth doesn't stay in the mouth. It goes everywhere. So the bad stuff that's between the teeth, and by the way, this is more than the beef in the teeth, okay? This is bacteria you can't even see that causes gingivitis and periodontitis. By the way, everything with itis is inflammation. And inflammation is a medical buzz term of the day for a very good reason, because it underlies all disease at the end of the day. So we want to prevent that stuff. And just by flossing, and this is what people have to know, they brush. We all brush in the morning. We don't want bad breath. We want whiter smiles, but we forget to floss. 60 to 9. Flossing does more than you think. That's the point.
Yeah, what about those picks? That's what I like better than the floss.
Here, I'm going to hand this over to you. That's why I'm also. So you know what? I put these next. So these are the gum. Turns out these guys are the number one recommended form of oral hygiene by dentists and hygienists. But the what are they calling this? Twisted mint. It tastes nice too. The gum picks are the easy way to get in the mouth. You and I, big hands, man hands, can't fit that floss. And what are we doing? So these are easy. I'm Netflixing. I'm watching my latest, show, binge, whatever. And 60, 90 seconds, I'm in between my teeth and adding years to my life. How much easier could it be?
Is there some type of etiquette here? I mean, I sometimes do this publicly, use these, and I realize, what am I doing?
Well, I feel like if you're in the car on your own and it's drive time, probably a good idea.
But not in the elevators. No, you don't want to be standing next to somebody.
Maybe not. I'm sure. I mean, I guess I would assume, and maybe you'd agree with me, that it would be in the same sort of context as you're brushing. I mean, you get it done at once. Here's actually, you're reminding me of a very important point. It's different than brushing by far. So brushing is superficial, and you still got to do it, and it'll help to keep free of cavities. It will not get between the teeth. So part of the protocol, part of the process, whenever you fit it into your day, is doing both. And I did the quick, back of the napkin cowboy math on this. So this is not evidence, proven science numbers I'm going to spew out here, but I think it's interesting. That 6 to 7 years, which is derived from evidence. A lot of published peer-reviewed journals, meta-analyses, JAMA, Nature magazine, all say that taking care of between the teeth, flossing, adds years to your life, prevents, things like Alzheimer's and cardiovascular disease. But where I'm going with this is that every second you floss for that 60 to 90 seconds, every second translates into about an hour extra lifespan.
So you're saying once a day is enough?
Once a day is enough, 60 to 90 seconds. Yeah.
But you can't overfloss, can you?
So bring up a really good point and reminding me that, some people who have sensitive gums, and the first time you start doing this protocol, you might start to bleed a little bit. That's okay. The point is tightening them up. I've got 9 dentists in my family, by the way. So imagine, Thanksgiving dinner is all about oral health. So I've learned this along the way. And again, I check my own patients in clinical setting for their oral. But bleeding gums can be a sign that there's some other more serious issues like gingivitis or periodontitis. But it might even start to happen for healthy people. So your question, coming full circle, can you over floss? I think you probably can. It only takes a couple, at the most, you don't need to do it for more than 2 minutes.
Right.
And there's something oddly satisfying about some of these products. Like there's those soft picks that are available now. Massaging the gums, making them more, let's call it astringed or tighter, is going to create a better, let's say, vacuum, if you will, around the tooth. That's what's going to be preventing the bacteria from slipping inside from your mouth into general circulation. That's what we want. But if you're over flossing to the point of damaging your gums or making your gums bleed, no good.
Okay, I see you brought some props for another time. What want to get to that?
It's for another time. I just, you're looking at a brain here. You're looking at a heart. You're looking at some teeth, and the point again is really just to help folks and yourself visualize. This is the surface we brush, but getting between here will actually prevent bacteria from getting general circulation. Our teeth are not just dead material. They're live, and there's circulation to them. This is the point of how bacteria would otherwise, what we call medically, translocate from the oral cavity into places that we don't want it in the rest of our body.
And of course, all the nerves that are there. I mean, all the connectivity is what you're getting at here, right?
You know what? There's a huge immune connection. In fact, it's autoimmune. It's a mistake that's made sometimes. So it starts ground zero with forms of infection, bacteria and viruses. This is a big theory, but proven. So when this is introduced introduced to the body maybe more than it should be, the immune system responds as it should. But if it over-responds and then maybe confuses it with other body tissues, such as Alzheimer's, such as Parkinson's, this is a confused immunity. It can and does translate in some people long-term to autoimmunity. Right. So now your body's attacking its own tissue. So we've heard of the microbiome in the gut. The gut is 80% of our immune system. Guess what? The gut basically starts in the mouth. Yeah, sure. Some people talk more than others, but that's not the point. It's bacteria, oral bacteria, the good and the bad. It's called dysbiosis. I affectionately refer to this as leaky mouth. If you've got the wrong strains or overly populated bad strains of bacteria in your mouth, and now you've got inflammation, could be subclinical. Sure. You might not even see it. Yeah. That's what's leaking into the system. Leaky mouth is a very big problem, and it's not often understood, and that's the whole point of this national tour.
Well, you make me want to floss right now.
Good. I appreciate it, and I hope you do. And people can learn more about this. Gumhealth.ca. There's all kinds of information. If they hit me up on social media at Wylde on Health, I'll happily send them a free ebook that I call Leaky Mouth, Delay the Day You Die.
Okay. Tell everybody about that email or that address again.
Yeah, at Wylde on Health. So my last name, Wylde on Health. That's my Instagram handle, Facebook, Twitter. People can reach out. I'll happily send them a Leaky Mouth ebook for free, 140 pages, 35 of which are all evidence-based references. And not only will they change the day they die, add healthy years to their life, because flossing does more than you think.
Well, I'll guarantee you that you've inspired many, many people listening right now to floss today that would not have.
So hope so, Todd. I appreciate so much the opportunity to share the news.
And myself at the top of the list, but I'll pay attention to etiquette and not do this in the elevator on the way down today.
There you go. I think it's a great point.
All right. And again, Bryce, for people who want to know more about you, how can they hit you up again?
Yeah, gumhealth.ca or my personal website, which has got over 500,000 pages of free information, wyldeonhealth.com.
And Wylde is Wylde.
You got it.
Okay, thanks, Bryce.
Thank
Very
you.
Interesting. Bryce Wylde, known as Canada's leading alternative health expert and published author. And go floss, everybody. Your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, taking your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. What is on your mind on this Thursday? It feels like a Friday, but it is Thursday, folks. But we've got the long weekend coming, and it's always great to have a long weekend, that's for sure. And Easter is a sure sign of spring. So give us a call. What's on your mind? 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Canada's four main political parties will square off tonight again in Montreal for the second and final leaders debate. Liberal leader Mark Carney, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, Jagmeet Singh of the NDP, and Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet took the stage yesterday, inspired on the economy and the trade war with the United States. Carney is leading in the polls and was the frequent target of attacks from his rivals during the French language debate. So did you watch the debate last night, the French language debate? Will you watch tonight's debate? Also, are you still undecided? I asked this question to people yesterday. And I'd like to hear from some of you who are undecided out there, and there must be some who are on the fence still. I would never ask who you're voting for. If you want to offer that, you can do so. But I certainly wouldn't ask you that directly. I am on the record as being undecided myself at this point, and I mean that. I'm truly undecided. And really, trust is a big factor here, folks, more so than ever before, I think. And I think for people, trust is the question for both these, Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. Mark Carney, people have some issues with trust when it comes to his record with his business and his tax haven and his track record on green technology and his green agenda. Some people don't trust that he will move forward with pipeline production. Some people feel as though he's conflicted. Again, trust issues. With Pierre Poilievre, people feel as though that he sounds too much like Trump. Again, these are just reflections of what people say. Just reality. This is how some people feel, folks. This is why I feel that some people are hesitant to vote for either of these candidates. Pierre Poilievre relied on slogans that worked when Justin Trudeau, who was immensely unpopular at the end of his run as prime minister, it worked. Axe the tax, it worked. But is it working now? I would say obviously not as much. So the fact that Pierre Poilievre has been a career politician, some people don't trust that he's got the acumen or the experience in order to get things done in order to deal with Donald Trump. So who can you trust? Who do you trust? Again, these are just things that I hear, folks. 902-405-6000. Or you can get into anything else you'd like to talk about. Again, 902-405-6000. Let's kick it off with Chris. Hello, Chris.
Good morning, Todd.
Hi there.
I listened to you yesterday, and I'm surprised that you're still on the fence because you outlined one of the best list of reasons not to vote Liberal that I've ever heard. And I'm surprised that you're still undecided.
Well, okay, remind me of what I said.
Well, you referenced the last 10 years and the problems basically that have been exacerbated and or caused by the Liberals. And you went through a lot of things there that sounded as though you might be a little more conservative leaning than you think.
Well, look.
I hope you are because it validates my opinion.
Yeah, but so when it comes to Mark Carney, I mean, look, he can't detach himself and untangle himself from the Liberal record, in my opinion,
that's right.
Because he was an advisor for at least 5 years to Justin Trudeau, and people apologists for Trudeau and Carney would say that, well, Trudeau, he might have been an advisor, but he probably didn't listen to him. I don't buy that. I think he did whatever Carney said that he should do myself.
Well, normally, normally if you hire an advisor, the same as if you hire a lawyer or an accountant, you hire them for the advice they're going to give you because you yourself are not qualified or knowledgeable to make those decisions yourself. That's why you hire advisors. Sure. And if you hire them and don't listen to them, then you're an idiot.
Yeah, that's right. And why would you keep them around for 5 years? That just doesn't make any sense.
The whole point. That's the whole point. Yeah. But I don't think Pierre sounds anything at all like Trump. I think that's a scapegoatish issue that people are using to try and discredit him. And to your comment earlier, all parties have slogans. Yeah. I remember years ago was when, we're the party of the people and whatever. You hear all kinds of things. So they have slogans and so on. But the political experience, generally, I'm not a great fan of politicians. I think you know that.
Yeah, neither am I.
But basically, I try and look at the person. And in Pierre's case, I really do think that we need someone with good political experience. Because as a prime minister, he could hire consultants, or he could hire experts to advise him and so on and get good advice. You can't really hire political experience, especially as much as he has, and you can't hire common sense in many cases. You can hire other expertise, and I think that's what he'll do, certainly, because it's not going to be all him making all the decisions. He'll have advisors the same as they all do. But I'd like to bring up Jim yesterday. He called me out specifically as being a big conservative. You're wrong, Jim, I'm not. And then he labeled me a populist, specifically saying, you're not a conservative, you're a populist. Well, Jim, your behavior is typical Liberal in that case because you labeled me. Labeling people and trying to divide people, that's what Trudeau does, that's what Carney does, and so many people are doing it, and I'm disappointed, Jim, that you do that. But you're wrong, Jim. I was born into a very entrenched Liberal family, but I don't vote party, never have. I vote for the individual leading the party and their politics and platform, if I agree with it or not. In the past, I voted both Liberal and Conservative. And Jim, I think your description of a populist is wrong. I forget exactly what you said about it, but my definition of a populist is to be a populist, I think means being in touch with and acknowledging issues popular and concerning to the ordinary people. And if you're a politician, then running to solve these issues. Now, if being concerned about the country, the state of the country, the economy that's been ruined by the Liberals, wages that have been depressed by the Liberals, a debt that's been increased by the Liberals in an amount greater than all other previous governments combined, being concerned about unaffordable food, housing, unaffordable housing, both rentals and home buying.
Yes.
If being worried about how young people today will afford home ownership and be able to raise families, and a whole bunch of other negative things that have been either created by or certainly exacerbated by the past 10 years of liberal policies, underwritten and advised to by Mark Carney. Well, yeah, Jim, if being concerned about all those things and the people adversely affected by those things makes me a populist, well, I guess I am a populist.
Okay, Chris, thanks for the call.
And damn proud of it.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. Frank's first-time caller. Hello, Frank.
Good day. Hello. I'm a bit of a news junkie. I enjoy politics, a political junkie, I guess. I record the news when I'm on vacation, FOMO, fear of missing out. I discovered, I'd like to say that if the world came to an end, I wouldn't be aware of it for another 3 days, but I would have it recorded on my PVR. I discovered your show over COVID, and I enjoy listening to the re-records in the afternoon. If you see that old guy on the rail trail, screaming at the clouds, that's probably me listening to the recordings.
Right.
Something that I realize is that we've had 4 elections in the past 6 months or so, and I knew that happened before. I went back and looked it up. It was 1988 when we had 4 elections in 1 year. So, of course, elections, for a political junkie, elections is a great thing. And this time, I get an election on my birthday. So the universe has aligned to give me an election.
Wow, April 28th, yeah.
Yeah, so it's weird hearing your birthday. As you approach your birthday and you start maybe hearing an event, it's like hearing your name called out in a crowd. So the universe has given me an election for my birthday. But what I wanted to mention to some of the people that might vote NDP or Green is that this is not the time to split the vote. The CBC seem to have it wrapped up that the Liberals are going to win, but I'm talking to the Bernies out there and the Michaels out there who don't understand why people don't vote NDP. David Cochrane last night on the CBC mentioned in a crisis the NDP look like a luxury you can't afford. So that's my message.
Okay, Frank, listen, thanks for calling, and let's hope to hear from you again, my friend, and happy birthday if we don't hear from you.
Okay, you might be sorry you said that. Okay, thanks.
Okay, take care.
Okay.
902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, way to reach us, you know the drill, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Jim, your name has been referenced, so I thought I'd get you on. What's on your mind?
Listen, thanks. I thought you had such a great show yesterday, with a real diverse discussion on the merits. And I just want to put it in the context of one word, and that is candidate. Candidate. And you're talking about the leader of the party and that candidate. And if we look how we're currently in this mess, Hillary Clinton was a terrible candidate. When she went up against Trump, I thought, oh, my God, it's just not going to work. And it didn't. Yeah. And then Joe Biden was a terrible candidate, right? I mean, he was infirm and so on. And he went up against Trump. Camilla lost the election as collateral damage. When you go back to the Liberals, Trudeau was 23 to 25% popularity across the country, and that was mainly because that 25% of people were not going to vote for Pierre Poilievre. And he's rude to the press. He's got bad manners, and I mean, the policies are the policies. They set aside, right? But you look right now, for example, if Peter MacKay had been running for office, it would be totally different. But people. There's such a big pile of people, just like the people that don't like Trudeau. They just don't like Poilievre for who he is. He's just seemingly not a nice guy. He's not a guy that if he lived in my subdivision, I'd say I can't wait to get down to his place, for barbecue and have a beer. Yeah.
But in fairness, Jim, Peter MacKay had his chance already, did he not, and failed?
The party was transitioning there, and they made huge mistakes to move in the direction they can, more towards the old Reform Party politics. It was their choice. And, Poilievre made great work at that in the House of Commons, making everybody look like a fool. But at the same time, he made himself look like a fool, Todd. So when we look at this, and there's going to be all kinds of navel-gazing about what the Liberals did to steal this election. It's all, the Liberals, we got this 10 years of this, and now we've got that. There has to be some self-reflection with respect. Why did we go into the election with this candidate when Trudeau, you like him or not, he used the rules, followed the rules, slipped out. He's yesterday's cold bowl of soup, if you will. Mm-hmm. And there's a new leader, and guess what? Canadians are looking at the options, and a big pile of Canadians do not like Pierre Poilievre. A big pile of Canadians want to see, perhaps some reform, but the preservation of the CBC, mm-hmm. and not. Poilievre treats reporters like terrible. It's terrible in this, especially when people are afraid of autocracy.
Well, in fairness, Mark Carney's been snippy with reporters as well at times. Fairness,
it's part of it's part of the game. Politics is a muddy puddle.
Yeah.
You can look at a puddle and say, I wish that was clear water, but it's muddy.
Yeah.
And, things are going to get muddy, and they're going to be ugly, and they're going to be not what we would do in our everyday lives, but that's the way that the system works. So in my view, I just hope that after this is all over, people don't say, they let these Liberals back in power. I'm sorry. If you had a better candidate, it would be a closer race. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Jim. Thanks for the call, pal. Appreciate it. All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Look, it should be mentioned that Pierre Poilievre has done quite well for the most part up until Christmas, when Chrystia Freeland imploded the Liberal Party and basically torpedoed Justin Trudeau and started all of this, and then the Trump factor. That changed everything. Up until then, Pierre Poilievre was going to be the prime minister of this country. So he did pretty well with that, with his shtick. And here's the challenge. Does he abandon that shtick now and become more modern, as it looks like he's trying to do, to try and grow the tent? But then if you do that, the danger is, who do you lose? I agree. Pierre Poilievre lacks personality. Absolutely he does. He lacks a personality for sure, but that approach that he has, that abrasive, caustic approach, is what was gained his rise to the leadership, and had the Conservatives with a 20-plus point lead in the polls over Justin Trudeau for 2 years. 902-405-6000. So it's a double-edged sword, is it not? It sure is. Megan, hello.
Hi.
Hi
Thanks
there.
for having me.
Sure.
I'm hearing a lot of men speak about personalities. I wanted to put a women's voice on.
Great.
Pierre Poilievre has never voted for abortion rights, for women's rights. That is extremely concerning as a woman. And I think all women and those who identify as women should be just as terrified as I am.
Can you give me an example? What you said, he's never supported women's rights. Give me examples.
Well, I'm
not being argumentative. I just want to get some clarity here.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So you can look at his track record and what he's voted for and what he's voted against. He's always voted against. In his 21 years.
Well, give me some examples.
I don't have the data right in front of me, but anybody can look up what he has voted for.
Well, I mean, you make the claim. You should have some data to back it up. In fairness, Megan, should you not?
Well, I mean, this isn't I'm not a politician, so yeah. I'm just listening to the radio right now. And anybody can look it up. I've looked it up in the past, even just recently. You can see it is a fact that Pierre Poilievre has always voted against, abortion rights, for example. That's definitely one that you can see as a fact.
No, I just want to counter this because I'm just echoing what he recently said, because he was asked this question directly, and he was emphatic and did not mince words. He said, "I support a woman's right to choose." The Conservative Party, that's been its policy for, I think, the past 20 years, and he's never varied from that. That's what he said on that issue. And he's very emphatic.
He can say whatever he wants, but it matters where he votes, and he has voted against it.
When did he vote against a woman's right to choose?
You can, again, you can look at it online. You can see where he has voted. He has voted against abortion rights in Canada.
Okay.
Even just recently.
I'll do a Google search. I'm not saying you're wrong, Megan. I'm just echoing what I heard him say 3 days ago, because he was asked this question directly by a reporter. What is your stance on abortion? And he was clear and emphatic. He said, I believe a woman has a right to do what she chooses with her own body, and that has been the Conservative Party's stance for 20 years. So that's all. That's what I'm going on.
He's not the only one who has voted against it in the Conservative Party, though. As of right now, the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada has recently put out information in regards to this. Every Conservative Party member across the country has voted against abortion. You can look up their website, the Abortion Coalition in Canada. They have been very much on top of this. It is very concerning. Not only that, though, of course, I'm a socialist. I want people to be able to feed their kids and have a roof over their head. I am concerned that the Conservatives won't be able to do that. I don't know if the Liberals can do that either. I've always voted NDP or Green. I feel like I have to strategically vote this year, though, and vote Liberal just so the Conservatives don't get in. Again, as a woman, I am terrified of the Conservatives getting in this year.
Okay, so I just wanted to wrap this up. I just did a quick Google search, and conservative government, that's on the Global News website, a conservative government would not pass any laws to restrict access to abortion, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said during a campaign stop in Southern Ontario. Quote, there will be no laws or other restrictions imposed on a woman's right to decide to do with her body as she wishes. And that is something I am guaranteeing to you and all Canadians. So you don't believe him, is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure if I do, especially in regards to his past voting. Like I mentioned, please look up the Abortion Coalition of Canada. They're the ones who have been putting out quite a bit of data on his voting past, and that's where I have recently seen that information.
Okay, fair enough. I will do that. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. All right, there you go. I'm just trying to get facts, folks. That's all I'm trying to do, because we hear about misinformation and disinformation. It cuts both ways. It works both ways, right? I'm not saying she's wrong. That was a pretty firm, emphatic statement that Pierre Poilievre made on abortion. Again, you just heard it. He was pretty emphatic. I'm not a Pierre Poilievre apologist. I just want to get good information, or as best information as we can. And please, people, send me links in which cite how we voted against women's rights, because I want good information. 902-405-6000. We'll be back.
Facts.
All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Alex, hello.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having my call.
Sure thing.
I'm running for election in Kings Hants for PBC.
Okay.
I've heard callers talk about populism. It's a much derided term, but I don't think it should be. It just advocates for the common man, and I think the position that we're in Nova Scotia and Canada is we're paying for the virtue signals of the Liberal Party, and we've doubled our debt since they've been in power. So all the history of Canada up until now, and we've doubled the debt. And because they subsidize the news media, and not everyone is like you listening to all points of view, we've got a very controlled Overton window that won't let us get out of this. And I just want to let people know that we have a PPC candidate in every riding in Nova Scotia. I don't believe that the Conservatives are representing your interests. They had a chance to differentiate themselves. They had a chance to be different from the Liberals, but they've sold themselves on winning Ontario and Toronto, which means that they've adopted a lot of Liberal policies that are going to crush Canadians, our ability to pay for power. If you want renewable green energy, look at Germany, look at Denmark. They're paying 4 times what we're paying right now. We already can't afford what we're doing right now. We live in a resource-rich country. It's time for us to bring those payments down and let Canadians recover from all these virtue signals. We have a green agenda with the Conservatives and the Liberals, which if we go to net zero, if we achieve their dream, we're removing 1.5% of the Earth's carbon. Meanwhile, in the other hemisphere, because this is a Ponzi scheme to them, they can't believe we're doing this. They're taking all of our manufacturing with less pollution control, and they're going to be upping it by 13%. So we are upping the carbon no matter what we do. If we just let the free market do it, you do not need the government in your life. You do not need them to be telling you which green initiatives they'll invest in. If you create a car that runs on less fuel or a more efficient battery, that will innately be invested in. But the government is selling Canadians on this illusion that we need them in place of us. I respect the Conservatives far less than I do the Liberals at the moment, because at least they're honest. They're telling people to vote for what they believe in. They don't complain about a vote split between the NDP and the Green Party. They just encourage you to vote for what you believe in. Conservatives believe largely in the PBC policy, but they're going by this pragmatic meme that was sold to them that we just have to get the libs out. And in the process, they've forgotten what the product is that the Conservatives are selling. So I just want to tell your audience that we have PBC candidates in all the ridings ready to represent regular Nova Scotians. And until they see a rise in our numbers, they will not be accommodating you. They have all sold you out, and we are here to help you get out of this. We cannot survive their virtue signals much longer. We need to invest back in Canadians, pull our foreign spending back home, get out of these foreign wars. Don't be falling for the bait of Trump. He wants us involved. He wants us to be revved up and charge headlong into them. We cannot win that trade war. We can easily diffuse this, and we can make Canada profitable again. And thank you so much for having me on.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Hello, Doug.
Hello.
Hi there. Go ahead.
Hey, just a second. I'll just get off the speaker here. Thanks for taking my call. Love the show.
Thank you.
In the past, I've voted Liberal. In my 60s, I've voted Liberal several times. I've voted Conservative several times. And something my father always used to tell me was, every 8 years, you just got to vote for the other guy. And it took me a long time to understand the wisdom of that. What happens is if you keep electing the same guy, you end up with a dynasty. And the dynasty, the bureaucrats and the politicians, they develop backroom channels and friendships, and they get comfortable with what they're doing, and they don't look at new ideas, and they plow ahead with their thing, and they don't look at what the options might be. And so I think that's what we're looking at here. I mean, we're focusing too much on who the leader of the party is and not enough on the fact that it's basically a large organization with somebody who's not a figurehead, but I mean, it's just the focal point. And so what happens is, you just have to give the other party a chance. It doesn't matter if we had 8 or 10 years of Conservative. I would say we should vote for the Liberals,
right? Just
to get some new ideas, break those relationships in the back room, and bring in some new faces, and start fresh. You know what they say: a new broom sweeps clean, right? And I think this is what we have to focus on. It's not that, Carney. We could talk all day about Carney, and the same with Poilievre, but Carney is going to be leading the same organization and is really going to be the same thing that we had before. And do we need 14 years of Liberal rule? It's too much. It's time to just give the other guys a chance. And, the world isn't going to come to an end. The country isn't going to collapse. If it turns out that the Conservatives don't do a good job, well, in 4 years, you can go back to the Liberals,
right?
Okay,
Doug, appreciate your call. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Hi, Gloria.
Hi, Todd. Thanks. Todd, I watched the debate until I found the hockey game much more exciting.
Yes, indeed. Are you a Habs fan, Gloria? I should know this. Are you a Habs fan?
No, I'm a Pittsburgh fan, but I was certainly cheering for the Habs last night. Okay. And while I don't like Ottawa, I'm going to cheer for them over Toronto because we have a Dartmouth player with Ottawa, Highmore.
I know, but Gloria, the Leafs, come on. The long-suffering Leaf fans, give us a break. We need your support.
But I think we got the answer a couple of speakers ago. We should all vote for Bernier. He will straighten the world out. No, Todd, I just want to say one thing, and I'm a news junkie. I watch all Canadian news. I don't watch American news. But then I watch the council and the parliament and the legislature, and I have never heard such biased reporting as from the national CBC.
Why do you say that?
Unbelievable.
Why do you say that, Gloria? Give me some examples.
They go out of their way to bring in people to say good things about Carney. You just have to watch it, Todd. Now you go to Vasi at CTV.
Vasi Capello, she does a great job.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah, she does a great job.
Vasi lets you make up your mind.
She does a great job. She really, really
She does a great job, and you get unbiased reporting. I know they're worried about their jobs, but God forbid if Poilievre gets in.
Well, he's now walked back a bit about defunding the CBC.
No, he talked about it again last night.
No, but the timeline, he said that he's going to do it, but he doesn't know when. Before it was he was going to do it immediately. He seems to be walking that back a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
I think he is. I think he's found that it's not popular with a lot of people.
No, I don't think it's a winner.
A smart politician does that.
Yeah.
You know, certainly the CBC can stand some scrutiny. We all know that.
Yeah. Gloria, I once heard an interesting quote, and I think it might apply to some of these politicians, and it's people will vote for somebody they don't like, but they won't vote for somebody who doesn't like them. And I think there's some truth to that. What are your thoughts on that?
I think so, too.
Yeah.
You know, people, I don't know, they're kind of thin-skinned at times.
Yeah, sure.
And they... if the person doesn't like them, and we go back to Peter MacKay.
Yeah.
There will never be a leader from the Atlantic provinces.
Mm.
You know, you can see that will never happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, one quick thing. I don't know if you knew that Halifax gets a fading grade for financial clarity and accountability.
I saw that. Pathetic, isn't it?
That is pathetic, and I'm hoping that our new mayor will take control of that.
Yeah, when we have the councillors on Monday, that's topic one that I'm going to hit them with. Because
you're not going to get any answers from them.
Well, you know what they'll say? We don't have anything to do with staff. The staff doesn't answer to us. That'll be the answer. I know it will, right?
You know, I was for the 11 years I was over there. I voted in favor of one budget when Amanda Whitewood was our chief financial officer. I voted once in favor because I always felt that we could cut back in different places and save more money for the taxpayer.
Absolutely. Gloria, listen.
So anyway, you have a great Easter.
Listen, thank you, but we need you on the Leaf bandwagon, please. Not going to happen, eh?
I don't like Matthews. And the reason I don't like Matthews was he was promoting gambling.
Yeah.
And young people look at these great athletes as a role model.
That's true.
And that's what turned me against Matthews.
Okay. All right, Gloria. Thanks for the call.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Tina, hello.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm calling, I was calling in solidarity with Megan, who called earlier, who mentioned how Poilievre and the Conservatives are really not for women's rights, and you asked for the bills. I actually read all the bills, 2010. And there were a total of 12 bills that would in some way restrict a woman's right to choose. Yeah. In particular, Bill 311, it was a private members bill introduced by Kathy Wigginton, I believe.
Yeah.
And it was voted for by the majority of the Conservative Party, including Pierre Poilievre and including Rick Perkins, who's my MP. Mm-hmm. And the only reason why it wasn't passed was because of the Liberals who voted against it.
Okay, what was the language of the bill? I just wanted Tina just clarify the language of the bill, if you will.
And there have been many bills in a variety of different language, but this bill in particular would see it a crime for anyone to harm a fetus, which could be a woman. And as we have seen in the United States, it could be a doctor. So in the United States, a doctor who performed an abortion on a 10-year-old rape victim was fined. So, a similar bill could be introduced in Canada. So, like Megan, I'm pretty terrified as well. But not just about a woman's right to choose, but, think about $10 a day daycare. Who does that impact most? Females, women. It might prohibit us from working. So if you read the bills in their totality, which I have, and it's a lofty goal to read all the bills. There's a lot. But I encourage people to do it because there's definitely a theme. If you read them in their totality, it feels like Conservatives are about removing things from us, in particular women. So read them in their totality and then make up your decision. I'm not telling people to vote for or against any particular party, but be informed.
Yeah, listen, I think to have a grown-up conversation about all of this, absolutely are there elements and quite a bit of support for anti-choice or whatever terminology you want to use within the Conservative Party? Absolutely there is, because you, as you mentioned, there have been private members' bills that have been put forward, and to what language and what degree they are, words matter, right? So all my pushback was Pierre Poilievre emphatically, without mincing words, said 3 days ago, and I read the quote, that he believes a woman has a right to choose, and he will never ever contest that, and never has. So that's all I'm going by.
That. Yeah, I totally get that, but votes matter. And he says one thing, but his votes don't indicate that he supports a woman's right to choose. His votes, if you can, it's all public and it's all transparent.
Sure,
you can see his
absolutely.
Vote. So while he says he does support a woman's right to choose, he actually hasn't voted for that. Yeah. And neither have many of the Conservatives. And in fact, the reason why we are not exactly like they are in the States right now, where certain states don't allow abortions and people are traveling to different states, or people are really in dire predicaments, it's because of the Liberals. It's the Liberals that have they voted against Bill 311. I encourage everyone to read it, and that's just one of 12 since 2010.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks, Tina. Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
All right, take care. You got it. 902-456. Look, I just want to have good information, folks. That's all I want. And let the chips fall where they may. I'm not cheerleading for anybody. I'm an advocate for good information, as much as we can get it. Let's see. Catherine, you wanted to call. I wanted to get you right on because you wanted to get in on this debate as well. So go ahead, Catherine.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for having me on.
Sure.
I called about, 6 months ago when Trudeau was still in office, and I said I'm a lifelong Liberal. And I said, but, read the room. It's time to go. And then, as you said earlier, you alluded to Chrystia Freeland blowing up the Liberal government. I wouldn't quite put it that far. I mean, a lot of things changed in the U.S. during that time to bring upon Chrystia Freeland leaving and Justin Trudeau leaving the party. But that's not really what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is some pushback against Tina and Megan. Now, Tina just called with some really substantial information on the Conservatives' voting rights. And I'd also abortion rights. I'd also like to point out, if you wanted to look up, and no, don't try to fact check me. I'm driving. I don't have it in front of me. But Pierre Poilievre has voted against affordable housing at least 4 to 5 times. He voted against minimum wage increase in 2022, but that's besides the point. You said the other day, 3 days ago, that he emphatically said to the Globe and Mail that he would oppose any abortion restrictions or women's rights. I'd like to go back to 2016 and 2015 when Mitch McConnell blocked Barack Obama's last 10 months in office, saying that a sitting president should not have the right to put through a Supreme Court justice. And for 10 months, the Republicans blocked Merrick Garland from becoming a liberal justice on the United States Supreme Court. And then guess what? Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and they pushed through Amy Coney Barrett, and they also pushed through Brett Kavanaugh. And guess what? Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett both said when they were grilled by the senators, they both said that they would uphold Roe v. Wade. And guess what? The United States Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade.
Yep.
So they went exactly against what they said they would do. And that is why I'm scared of Pierre Poilievre. Because you know politics, Todd. Yeah. They can stand up there and they can say whatever anybody wants to hear. But at the end of the day, they can just turn around and do whatever they want. And that is what's scary. That's what's scary for my daughters.
Well, and Catherine, this speaks to the trust issue that I raised with Lori and I raised at the beginning of this call-in segment. It's who do you trust, and trust is really, to me, that is perhaps the ballot box issue question. Who do you trust? And clearly, you don't trust him.
I hope that we can trust him. Yeah. I hope if he wins, he will do what he says. Because a lot of the stuff, if he's being truthful, if he really does want to do with a lot of the stuff that comes out of his mouth, yeah, that would be great. I just don't know if I believe him. Yeah. I don't know if I believe him. And if you look at his track record, it speaks for itself.
Okay.
You know, and I mean, and let's not even, I kind of also want to talk about the polls. I'm really ticked off. I was I was listening to Rob Snow last week in the afternoon, and a man called in, and as soon as the Liberals went up in the polls, all of a sudden they don't believe it. When the Conservatives were up in the polls, I didn't hear a single Liberal say it's fake. It's fake news. It's like they're manipulating the polls. Like, why are people doing this? This is scary stuff. Because then if Carney wins, then they can turn around and they can say, oh, it was rigged, it was stolen. Like, what's happening in the United States is scaring the crap out of me.
Yeah. And again, it comes down to trust. Thanks, Catherine. Appreciate the call.
Thanks, Todd.
Take care. 902-405-6000. Mike, hello.
Hey, Todd.
Hi there.
I got to laugh at callers like Megan who call, and she would go to the hill with what she called about and die on that hill with no proof. She wants someone else to look up the proof. Like, that just drives me nuts. But on the Poilievre and the abortion thing, yes, he has voted against abortion in the past. But how come when people change, he'll never change. A leopard never changes his spots. But Joe Biden has said racist things in the past about black and white should be segregated on buses.
That's true.
Oh, well, people changed. He don't feel that way no more. People change. Justin Trudeau, blackface, whether that was malicious or not, it is still, he should have known that's not something to do. Oh, people change. He's a champion for human rights. But when it comes to a conservative and you say, well, people change. No, not them.
Yeah, that's a valid point, and I'll use myself as an example, and I'll be completely honest with you. I have done a 180 on abortion. At one point, I was pro-life, if you want to use that term. I'm no longer. I'm firmly in the camp of a woman has a right to choose. Firmly in that camp. So if I were running for office, some might roll the tape from me back and doing talk radio in 2008 and say, "There's Todd saying he's pro-choice or pro-life." And so therefore he's lying. He's just saying. So that's a great point. I'm an example of that. I have changed my opinion on this, and I mean that legitimately. I have.
Everybody changes.
Yeah.
I voted for Justin Trudeau in the first election.
Yeah.
I would never do that again. So I've changed. You know, like.
But Mike, why do you think Pierre Poilievre is having such a hard sell when it comes to convincing people that he's changed?
I think I'm going to vote for Pierre because I honestly think he's going to try to put more money in our pockets, and that's my issue right now. But I think he's having a hard time because of the slogans and the name calling, and it does come across as childish. I think.
Yeah.
I think he should let that go and stop attacking like a pit bull all the time. Just say what you're going to do to fix things. Don't shift it off to. I believe that was Andrew Scheer's problem. He didn't say what he's going to do. He just attacked Justin Trudeau constantly. I mean, I wouldn't vote for Scheer anyway, but I believe that was his problem. He should have won that election, but they just attack. It's like, stop with that and tell us what you're going to do to fix it.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Appreciate the call. Take care. All right, let's get one more on. Ken, be quick if you can, please.
Hi, Todd. I just with the polls and that, I'm very skeptical too because I'm a social guy. I'm out there, and you know something. Since the start of this election or whatever, I've heard two people say that they're going to vote Liberal. The most people I ever hear talking that they're voting Liberal are the ones calling the shows. And as far as the women goes about women's rights and that, do they forget what Trudeau did to the Governor General?
Yeah.
Do they forget what he did to what's her name there, Chrystia Freeland?
Yeah.
How about the largest rise in domestic violence? I'm sure Nova Scotia is right up there with the rest of the provinces now.
Yep.
Do you want another 10 years of that? How about that guy that's out in Alberta that decapitated the guy and then started eating him? Where is he now? He's on the street. So if you're looking about protecting women and protecting your kids and everything, maybe you should lock up the criminals for a little longer.
Okay, Ken. Appreciate the call. Thanks for the calls, everybody. I apologize. I did not get to all of you. We will certainly continue to talk about these issues, I'm sure, over the next couple of weeks heading into the election, which is April 28th. Treat childhood obesity by reducing stigma. That when we come back. All right, this story on the CBC website this week, the headline, Treat Childhood Obesity by Reducing Stigma, Adding Options, say New Canadian Guidelines. Joining me to discuss all of this is Dr. Katherine Morrison, co-author of the Pediatric Obesity Guideline and also a pediatrics, a professor of pediatrics at McMaster University. Doctor, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your valuable time, of course.
Yes, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
All right, so childhood obesity. Look, I'm almost 56 years old, and I can remember when I was a kid how these things, attitude and stigma. I know that we still have a way to go, but I think we've come a long ways from back in that era. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you make a very good point. I think we are beginning to recognize the stigma that we apply to individuals. But it's not universal. There are assumptions about how people must live their, what behaviors they must do, the fact that they must eat too much and that they clearly don't exercise, just based on how they appear to us, are still pretty common, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. All right, how do we define childhood obesity? Might seem like a simple question, but I think an important one.
Yes, it's a very important question, and it is not a simple question. Yeah. Traditionally, we basically define it based on a measure called BMI, which changes over age with kids. So we compare it to children at that exact age, and then if it's very markedly elevated, we call that obesity. But it's important to remember that BMI is just a measure of weight for height, and it doesn't tell us anything about what kind of weight, whether it's muscle or fat. So that makes it really not such a simple question.
Okay, so tell us about the guidelines and New Canadian Guidelines.
Yeah, so the New Canadian Guidelines are different in several ways. First of all, they went to families of children, parents of children with obesity, as well as healthcare providers, and said, what are the most important things that we should be, looking for? What are the outcomes that these kids are looking for? And the parents really rated very highly the quality of the child's life. And they're not having symptoms of a mental health disease like anxiety or depression. They also rated, their cardiometabolic health, so their blood pressure and their cholesterol level and whether they have diabetes. All of those were rated more highly than the size of their body, which is essentially what BMI is. And so we conducted the whole guideline analysis to try and look at what was the impact of our current therapies on those outcomes. And that's a very different approach. Based on that, the multi-component interventions that include psychologists and dietitians, activity therapists or kinesiologists, working together to help a child and their family make behavior change is really the strongest recommendation and the basis for how we manage these children. But some children, it should be considered and discussed with the family and with the teenager, whether or not the use of some of these these medications that are now approved for the treatment of obesity in adolescents, or in less commonly bariatric surgery, at least those should be part of a conversation.
Okay, so when it comes to identifying this as a disease, that's no longer being questioned by anybody, or is that's we have solidarity on that, do we?
I think there's pretty good solidarity on that, yeah.
And that's a good first step, obviously.
It's a really important first step because what it says is, this is based upon the biology of the individual, their genetics, how their brain works in response to food, etc. And so I think that's the starting point in terms of how we approach our therapy.
All right. What about drugs and Ozempic and things like that? Is that something that we are looking at for childhood obesity?
Yeah, so there is approval in Canada for a medication called Wegovy, which is very similar, essentially the same to Ozempic, and use of that medication for the treatment of obesity in adolescents 12 years of age and older. And so we do use that at times, but in the guideline, we talked about that this is something that should be discussed, and the facts should be discussed with the families, including the fact that we don't have long-term data yet. We have 1-year data, and I hope we will have long-term data over time, but we don't have that yet in terms of understanding what the health impacts, especially adverse health impacts, are from these medications.
All right, so you're mentioning all the resources that go into dealing with this in a perfect scenario. Unfortunately, we're far from a perfect scenario in many cases, and just getting primary health in general is a challenge. So, what are your thoughts on the resource challenge with all of this?
You are 100% correct on that. And, one of the outcomes of this guideline, I hope, is a call to provincial governments across the country that this therapy needs to be provided for this group of children and adolescents and their families. And we're a long ways from that, especially in many parts of the country. But I think if all of us raise our voices, that I'm hoping that this is something that will attract more attention.
And of course, parents have a role in all of this, and obviously being empathetic and all of that. But I think lifestyle does play into this to some degree, right? It never hurts to have a good example, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think a lot of people, the history is that the stigma suggests that people say, well, it's the parents' fault. But I think it's very important to understand that there's the biology of that child and often of the parents, since they're genetically related, that changes how they respond to our food environment. So that you would take one person who is would have a much higher appetite drive, versus another person in the exact same environment who would respond very differently. And not so much because they're stronger or better in any way, but because they have a different biology.
Yeah, indeed. Doctor, I appreciate your time. Thank you so very much. By the way, are there resources online that you'd like to recommend people who might be listening to this and want to get more information on this?
I think if people look to the Obesity Canada website, that is where the guideline is sitting, but there's also information there for families and for individuals living with obesity to find help.
Okay, Doctor, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Great chatting with you.
All right, take care. Dr. Katherine Morrison, co-author of the Pediatric Obesity Guideline, also a professor at McMaster University. Is it time for Canada to lower the federal voting age? This is always a contentious issue. We'll address it when we come back. All right. Is it time for Canada to lower the federal voting age? This is something that we've discussed on the show and comes up from time to time. Joining us to discuss all of this is Michael Wigginton, a postdoctoral fellow in political science at Carleton University. Michael, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me on, Todd.
All right. So why are you interested in this topic?
Well, to be honest, I'm interested because a journalist called me and asked me about it earlier last week is the actual reason. I do think, though, that actually is something that Canada should consider doing. There's been some evidence from Scotland, which has a voting age of 16, that people who get the chance to vote at 16 are actually more likely to continue voting later in their lives than those that wait until later in life to start voting. So it could be a good way for us to actually increase voter turnout over the long term.
Are you surprised how controversial this is? Generally, it's kind of inherently controversial. Does that surprise you?
It doesn't. I totally understand why people would find it controversial because, of course, when you ask about lowering the voting age to 16, the natural question is, well, why 16? 18 at least is consistent. across all federal laws that 18 is what we consider an adult to be. And so, you're an adult at 18, you can vote at 18. With 16, it's a much more arbitrary seeming age.
All right, the philosophy out there, or the thought process is that this would benefit the Liberals. Do you think that's accurate or not?
If you'd asked me like 5 years ago, I would have definitely said yes. It would probably, actually not necessarily favor the Liberals. It might have favored the New Democratic Party at the time, actually, or even fringier left parties, lower with less support currently. But actually, at the moment, young voters particularly young male voters, are voting largely for the Conservatives. Mm-hmm. And so actually, this might benefit Pierre Poilievre and his party.
Do you think it's realistic that at some point Canada will adopt this? Is it inevitable or far from that?
I don't think it's inevitable, but there is a bit of movement around the world towards this. There is an increasing number of jurisdictions that let people vote at 16, some at 17 as well. And we have a history of this too. The voting age in Canada was 21 federally until 1970. And the federal government, over the course of the 20th century, the federal government and the province all gradually lowered from 21 to 18, some doing 19 as an interim measure. So it's entirely possible that we will once again have a movement towards 16. But I don't think that it's by any means a foregone conclusion.
And integrating politics and political science into the school system, that could be a good partner when it comes to all of this?
I think it could. And that's the main reason why Scottish researchers think that they've had success in getting more voter turnout from 16-year-olds than actually they do from 18-year-olds as first-time voters, is because 16-year-olds, by and large, they're still in school, they still live with their parents, so they might be more surrounded by people who are more engaged in politics and voting, and that might get them interested in voting for the first time, whereas by the time they're 18, many of them at least are off on their own, living their own lives, and might be a bit more difficult to get interested into participating in politics formally for the first time.
All right, what are the logistics? What would have to happen? I'm assuming legislation would have to be passed in order for this to happen.
Yeah, it's actually a relatively simple process. When we did the previous times, it would take a new law, amendment to the Elections Act. So it could happen at any time if we get a federal parliament that's interested. There have been private members' bills put forward a few times in recent years that haven't succeeded, both by MPs and by senators, actually, interested in lowering the voting age. But it would simply take a bill to pass the House and the Senate.
All right. And again, I don't know that this would be something that would be a priority by any stretch, by anybody right now, considering what we've got on our plate politically.
No, I don't think it likely would be. It's not something that's come up a lot. There have been court challenges by interest groups of young people that think that it's a violation of their rights not to be allowed to vote. So that could bring it back into the forefront if that goes in their favor. I don't think that's very likely, though. And no, I think at the moment people are going to be much more focused on the trade war situation with the United States and on other issues, and they are going to be lowering the voting age. But in a few years' time, who knows? That could change.
Okay. Appreciate your time, Mike.
My pleasure.
All right, take care. Michael Wigginton, postdoctoral fellow in political science at Carleton University. This is something that I've talked about, and we've taken calls on this. I think maybe 5 or 6 months ago now, and I think it was quite split. I think there's an argument. I think one of the fundamental arguments that I made was that at age 16, you're already given immense responsibility when it comes to certain things like driving. So therefore, if you can drive. And now, of course, we got calls from people saying we have a graduated licensing system so that you don't just get the keys when you turn 16. You have to drive for a year with supervision, et cetera, et cetera. But I can see that there's some validity, some merit to lowering the voting age to 16. I can also see why some people would fear that, because it might advantage one party over another. The general thought process is the Liberals would be the beneficiary of the change. I don't know that would be cut and dry, because as Michael just mentioned, the Progressive or the Conservative Party of Canada right now is its strength. There are young men in their 30s. So you think Conservative Party, you think older people like me and my demographic. Old white guys, but that's changed, and that's changing. I think if you lowered the age to 16 and really appealed to and drove policies that would inspire that cohort, then that's a fair game. As far as cognitive ability or having the right mindset, look, I think you'd have 16, 17-year-olds that would be no problem, and others you wouldn't want to vote because based on all types of things. But that could be said about the electorate in general. There's plenty of people in their 50s and 60s who probably shouldn't vote based on their attitudes. Shouldn't say shouldn't vote. They'll always have the right to vote, but you get my point. Anyway, an interesting topic nonetheless. I saw this story. I wanted to quickly mention it. I saw it on the CBC website this morning. The headline, Seriously Broken. New salary, a reminder of how little WNBA players earn. The number one draft pick is reported to have earned in the WNBA, the number one draft pick. Guess how much? $80,000 for a rookie year with the Dallas Wings. $80,000. And the story goes on to talk about some of these other salaries, all in the kind of that vicinity. Basketball's newest stars projected to earn $78,000 US for her rookie year. That's about $109,000 Canadian. The number one draft pick by the NBA, by comparison, can expect to earn $13.8 million US in his rookie year. So there you go, folks. The number one pick in the NBA is going to make almost $14 million. The number one pick in the WNBA, the Women's National Basketball Association, $80,000. And is that fair? Well, I don't know that if it's fair or unfair or just how it is. It could be just straight economics. How much interest is there in the WNBA? I don't know. I don't pay attention to it. I'm not deriding it by any stretch, by the way, when I say that. I'm just being honest with you. And I can honestly tell you, I don't know one person that religiously or follows even peripherally the women's basketball. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just being honest with you. And revenue is driven when it comes to athletes and their pay by eyeballs and attention and ratings. That's what drives all of this. And if the WNBA commanded and demanded huge ratings and huge numbers, and again, I'm not deriding the organization at all, or the skill level, or the entertainment value, or anything, but the facts are facts. I would liken it to the PWHL, Professional Women's Hockey League. When it opened last year, it opened with a big splash. I don't really hear much about it anymore. I really don't. And who's responsible for that? Perhaps I should be talking more about it. But women's sports salaries, athletes' salaries, are going to remain very low as long as the revenue is what it is. And I would also say as long as women are willing to work and play for this kind of money as well. I just thought I'd throw that out there. I'll talk to Cecil Wright about this when he joins us for our sports segment at the end of the show. We'll chat with Allistar Alders when we come back. Thanks. All right, it is a Thursday heading into a long weekend, so we want to get all the deets on the weather and get some other nuggets of information out of Allistar Alders, our weather specialist. Allistar, hello.
Hello.
What's going on?
Not a lot. It's a Friday on a Thursday, so can't complain. And we've had some nicer weather this week after that snow last week. So I think people have been a bit happier with the temperatures, at least this week. It's been nice to have a bit of sunshine in the mix too. It's been a cool start to April.
It has. All right, so let's tee up let's get the forecast out of the way right, because people want to know what's going on weather-wise this weekend.
So, I mean, it all depends, I guess, on what day you have your plans and, I mean, what you are planning to do. If you're staying inside or you're maybe having an egg hunt outdoors or just planning to do some outdoor activities. I mean, in terms of the amount of sunshine in the sky, that will certainly be tomorrow for Good Friday. It's expected to be a mainly sunny day and not too bad temperature-wise. The high near 12 degrees. We should be near 9-10 for this time of year, so not too bad. We do have an area of low pressure that will bring in some scattered rain showers on Saturday, so it's a cloudy day, a bit cooler. The high for Saturday, 9 degrees. As I mentioned, those scattered showers. I don't think the day will be a washout, but certainly on and off showers, especially as we go through the afternoon and Saturday night. Some improvements on Sunday. The forecast guidance hasn't been in full agreement on how fast the system will depart. Most do have it exiting fairly quickly, and that would allow for some sunshine. So I think more clouds to start the day and then more sun as the day goes on, but there could be a chance of lingering showers Sunday. I think Sunday the big story will be the winds. They'll become northwesterly and quite gusty, possibly upwards of 60 or 70 at times as we go through Sunday afternoon and Sunday night. So we should achieve a high near 12 on Easter Sunday, but then falling from there with that shift to the northwest wind. And then Easter Monday, most of us are back to work. Some have it off. If you do have it off or you're heading back to work, sun and cloud and 10 degrees. So a bit of everything in the forecast except for some snow. Temperatures not too bad, near or just a bit above normal. Certainly the pick for sunshine will be tomorrow. And if you have Monday off, a bit of sunshine possible on Sunday, but windy and a chance of showers. The wettest day looking to be Saturday.
Yeah. Not bad though.
Not too bad. No,
Yeah.
we've certainly had past Easters where it's been wet or even very snowy. So I think we'll take it. We'll take it.
Sure, and kind of typical April 17th weather, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people we've come to expect that April is not as snowy. Like when we had the snow last week, I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is April. It shouldn't be snowing," and obviously. Most of us don't want snow in April, but, snow is not uncommon in April. The temperatures have been a bit cooler than average, especially at nighttime, but we have been seeing some more typical April weather in terms of temperatures, and we are seeing, somewhat of a typical pattern in terms of, quite a bit of wind, and also, certainly more wet weather that we become used to really in April. So it's nice to have a bit of a balance. But yeah, we're certainly looking more at a typical and even trending a bit warmer for the second half of this month.
All right. We always like to kind of pick your brain about some factoids and folklore and weather folklore because you're good at that. So why don't you share some of that with us?
Well, I mean, in terms of, we're talking about the wet weather, the old saying that April showers bring May flowers.
Yeah, that's a load of crap, isn't it? Huh?
I mean, the flowers they're going to come regardless of, whether we have the showers or not. Yeah. But I find it just really cool to, trace, where these sayings originated because we all know it, but we don't necessarily know where it came from. Yeah. But the saying is often traced back to 1157.
Oh no, I like 11-teen.
11-teen, yeah, we'll go with that. A short poem written by Thomas Tusser, and in that poem he wrote that sweet April showers do spring May flowers. Now, there's a bit of a contradiction because there is another poem penned by Geoffrey Chaucer at the end of the 14th century, and his poem translates to read, when in April the sweet showers fall that pierce March's drought to the root and all, and bathed every vein in liquor that has power to generate therein and sire the flower. So it's a bit of a debate between Tusser's specific mention of May flowers and Chaucer's great focus on the month of March. So perhaps it was, Chaucer's poem that evolved over the years, but no doubt it originated in the United Kingdom where, it's very common to have April showers in the UK weather. I mean, throughout the entire year, but especially in the spring. So I think that saying has, evolved and it made it across the pond. Certainly our weather is similar and very different from the UK, but similar in many ways with the storms we often get here then often move off towards Europe.
Did you say sire the flower?
Yeah.
What's that mean?
It's a translation of Chaucer's poem. Sounds
a little
to
risky.
Generate therein and sire the flower.
Sounds a little risque to me.
Yeah, very interesting. There's also some interesting Easter folklore. There was one saying that every Good Friday it rains because in the Christian belief it was, it's said that it rained
God weeping or something
on
like
Good
that?
Friday. Yeah. Obviously, tomorrow we're not getting no rain is in the forecast, so it's just a piece of folklore. Yeah. There's not a lot of truth to it. There's also sayings about Easter Sunday that if it rains on Easter Sunday, it'll rain for several Sundays going forward. And I mean, there's no real scientific backing to it. There's years where it can rain by chance every Sunday, but there's years where it hasn't either. So, I mean, obviously some folklore is rooted in some science, when Red Sky at Night, Sailor's Delight.
I think that's more than folklore. I think
there's truth to that for the most part because, the level of clouds that move in ahead of a weather system or behind a weather system can signal what's to come.
That's one that I take to the bank. When I look out and I see that red horizon at night, I know there's going to be a nice day the next day.
It was funny. I think it was last week or the week before. There was a really nice red sunset, but there was bad weather in the forecast the next day. So it doesn't always ring true.
You just do that to me. You want to make me look bad. That's what you wanted to do.
That's my goal.
Listen, I do that all by myself.
But you're right. For the most part, if you see that, that nice red or pink sky at night, some nice weather's in the forecast, or if you see it in the morning, because we get those high level clouds usually before the mid and lower level clouds that are associated with, wet or stormy weather. It typically does ring true. So it's there's certainly some pieces of folklore that have scientific backing, and then others that are simply just that.
Okay, Allistar, thanks for coming in. Always appreciate it, my friend. Have yourself a fantastic long weekend.
You too. Thank you so much.
We'll see you next Friday.
Thanks.
Allistar Alders, our weather specialist. And again, looks like the forecast is not too bad over the next few days. All right, this story. Nova Scotians now have a free tool to help them plan for the future to protect their financial well-being. The province has provided funding for a new power of attorney app developed through a partnership with the Legal Information Society of Nova Scotia. Joining us to discuss all of this is Heather de Bert Romilly, Executive Director, Legal Information Society of Nova Scotia. Heather, hello.
Hello, Todd, and what a lovely segue from poetic justice to the season to access to justice for the people.
Exactly. So tell us more about this app. It sounds like it's a fantastic idea.
We are really delighted to be making it available to Nova Scotians, and if I might say, it's the culmination of over a decade of work and technological developments, and we're really pleased because it responds to a significant demand for this tool that we've received from the many thousands of Nova Scotians who they've been in touch with either through our core services. We have a legal information helpline, live chat, email, but also through community outreach sessions and feedback from the many community organizations that use our information and tools. And the power of attorney is probably one of the most important instruments that a person can have because it affects them while they're still alive, but that they are in a position, like whether they're unconscious or they're out of the country, that they're unable to actually manage their affairs. And so this is not just for people, you might say, who are retired. This is for people who are anywhere from 19 years old and onward. So it's a very relevant tool that everybody should have. And to date, the cost has really been sort of what's gotten in the way of people actually doing this planning. And it's part of estate planning where we suggest you should make your will, make your personal health care directive, and your power of attorney. And now we're offering people these tools free of charge, high quality, developed with legal experts, and very much supported. In terms of, you might say broadly, that we haven't received like any negativity from the legal community, and so we really see it as being a very good news story.
Okay, so it's an app, but can you turn it into something hard copy as well? Because some people might be concerned if they would like to have something on paper as well.
Yes, great question, Todd. It is available to make a legal document that you print off. So you go onto our website at www.legalinfo.org, and right there on our homepage, you see our apps that you just click on the category, and the Power of Attorney app, you click on that, and it gives you a really nice guide. It gives you forms that you can download and fill in for the accounting part, and it gives you this online guided pathway where you are asked for the information that is needed. And at the end of the process, and it can take anywhere from 10 minutes, let's say, to 40 minutes, depending upon how much information you have to share. At the end of it, you push complete, and it automatically prepares the proper form document with the information you've entered, and it emails it back to you along with any supporting documentation that you might need to have completed, such as an affidavit if you're dealing with real estate matters under the power of attorney. So we've really ensured that you get everything you need, and so all that's required is then for you to sign it and have two witnesses present at the time that you're signing it, and they sign it, and then it is complete. So that's when you want to give a copy or make you're the person you're identifying as the attorney who's going to take care of the matters for you. You want to make sure you let that person know, anybody who's a backup, if you're appointing a monitor to basically oversee the activities of the person you're appointing to manage your affairs. There are a whole bunch of safeguards that we've set out, and we've written it in really plain language so that people can understand what they're basically doing through this document. Unfortunately, we can't change the terms, like the attorney part. That's confusing to people, but we do our best to provide really good information. And then people can always call us or email us if they have any questions or need help. And we've also developed online training for volunteers who might want to help people. That's on our website, so that they can be a kind of estate navigator. And there's been a lot of interest, and we're hoping to work through the public libraries with their volunteers to be able to offer some of those services. So trying to sort of give that wraparound support to really make it meaningful and accessible to people.
Okay, so again, your website you're referring to is the Legal Information Society of Nova Scotia. That's where they can get all this information. And can they get the app there as well?
You bet. So it's at legalinfo.org. That's all you need to type into your web browser with the www. Yeah. And everything is there, and it's actually the first sort of category on our homepage. And I do want to just mention that normally, like a power of attorney, like the low ball is like $300 for a document. It can cost up to like thousands of dollars. But to date, we've had 105 completions alone in the past week. So that's like a $30,000 savings. Yeah. And with our Wills app and our Personal Healthcare Directive app, this year we will have actually saved people, communities, the economy, over $1 million. And with the launch of this Power of Attorney app, we expect that is going to be like over $1.5 million alone in this upcoming year. So Listens is really small. We only have like a budget of even less than $500,000. So I also think it's really important for people to understand that we're charitable not-for-profit, and we're really using the money invested in us wisely to try to make accessible tools for the public. And want to thank the province who invested in us, but also the Nova Scotia Law Foundation, which is a core funder, and lawyers like Jessica Lyle, who's the top estate lawyer in the province, who worked with us on our apps, and Jocelyn Downey, who's a respected healthcare expert and professor emeritus at Dalhousie School of Law, who invested in us for our Personal Directive app. So just sort of want to say we really believe in making tools for people, and we're actually just launching a separation agreement app. There's information about it on our website too. So that might be another matter of discussion of interest, but really trying to help people where they are, and the information is very accessible, and we welcome feedback too. So we have a feedback form, or feedback link, and we welcome people's feedback, and as I say, any questions.
Okay, Heather, always appreciate it. Thanks so much. Good luck with it. Sounds like a great initiative.
Well, and Todd, make sure you use it yourself.
Absolutely.
And give us your feedback.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Happy Easter, and thank you for the coverage.
You as well. Take care. Heather Bert Romilly, Executive Director, Legal Information Society of Nova Scotia. Cecil Wright when we come back. All right, time to talk sports with our sports guru, Cecil Wright. And Cecil, I don't even know where to begin. There's so many things that I'd like to talk about. But first, let's start with the NHL. 5 Canadian teams in the playoffs, including the Battle of Ontario. Montreal is going to play Washington. That should be a good series. Winnipeg's in. I mean, this is going to be exciting stuff. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man, and don't forget the Lightning and the Panthers, too. That could be pretty darn explosive.
Yep.
But I got my eye on that first one you mentioned, the Maple Leafs and the Senators. You know, I hope Toronto's able to get by Ottawa, because I'd really like to see them make it into the second round of the playoffs for a change. But I'm telling you, you better watch out for Ottawa, man. They play a hard game. It's going to be a great series.
All right. Is this a Cecil Wright impersonator? Did you just say that you want the Leafs to get into the second round?
Well, it'd be something that we're unaccustomed to. I mean, they never usually get by Boston, and they end up golfing the second week of the playoffs.
Oh God, I know, but I just never thought I'd hear you say anything even closely wishing the Leafs well. So I'm surprised. Is all I'm saying.
Look, I have cousins that root for Toronto. I love torturing them every single year, so I'll take my heat this year. The Bruins aren't in there, so go ahead. Good luck.
All right, so what are your thoughts on Winnipeg? I mean, the President's Cup, we know this Boston has won the President's Cup recently and gone out in the first round. So this is not, sometimes it's a curse. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I agree. And, they're playing the Blues, and they're no pushover. And, Jim Montgomery, the former Boston coach, has done a great job, with the Blues. And I think this is going to be an interesting series. And is not our former Moosehead, is he still out for Winnipeg?
Yeah, I think he is. That
hurts.
Yeah.
That hurts big time. I mean, he's one of their best scorers.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of the Mooseheads, they lost 4 straight, but my oh my, they went much further than we thought they would, and they get a lot of credit for really playing and getting as deep into the playoffs as they did.
Listen, knocking off Drummondville is no small
That was
feat.
huge. Huge.
That right there, people should have been satisfied with that alone.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the team was satisfied, and that's why they got knocked out or anything like that. The Huskies are also a very good team, but beating Drummondville, that says a lot about the heart of your team. They got a nice young team, a great core to build off of next year, and the following year should be special.
Absolutely. Vladimir Guerrero, I mean, did they overpay or what?
Well, certainly they did.
Yes, they did.
How are they going to pay Bichette now?
Yeah,
where are they going to get that money?
They won't. They can't.
They're going to have to trade him.
Yeah.
You watch.
Yeah, they'll trade him.
I feel bad for him too, though, because I think Bichette's a very good player.
Yeah,
gives his all. I can't complain about it. He's a little up and down defensively at shortstop, but
good hitter.
Who isn't?
Good hitter though.
Who is excellent hitter?
Yeah,
and that's going to be a hole in their lineup the day he leaves.
Okay, so some would say that the Blue Jays had no choice, though. They needed to nail down their franchise guy who was likable, affable, all that stuff. A good character guy. So I guess that comes with it a price tag, right? That's just the way it is it not?
$500 million?
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to make it a better story than it is.
$500 million?
Yeah.
What's the highest ticket price in Toronto right now? Let's say it's $500.
Yeah.
You can double that now.
Well, that's $500 million at the end of the 14 years. He will be a pretty sad player in 14 years, I would dare say.
I would say 10 years.
Yeah, or less. But your dream of having him as the first baseman for the Red Sox is done.
Oh, and doesn't that just tickle your fancy? But you know what, though? There are still some other teams out there at some point, who will still try to swing a trade for a guy like that, and it won't be Tampa Bay. They're playing a little 10,000 seater right now, after Hurricane Milton. Yeah. I feel bad for them, but I don't understand how come them or Miami hasn't moved to Montreal yet anyway.
Yeah, the train. Speaking of the American League East, I can't help but notice the Yankees are in first place.
Oh, I feel sorry for you. That's going to make the big letdown even greater for me when the Yankees, when Judge goes on the disabled list.
Oh my gosh, Cecil, please. Listen, buddy, what else you got? Anything locally before I let you go? Always wanted to give you the chance to promote the good local stuff.
Well, I know that the new professional basketball franchise, the Halifax Hoopers, have their opening game is it tomorrow night. I think it's tomorrow night. Yeah, Friday night over at the Dartmouth Sportsplex, and I think I'm gonna have a little look just to see what kind of talent they have. I know they've got some pretty decent players, but I always love to support the local basketball franchises, and this gives me an opportunity to do so. And I want to wish you congratulations on your wedding. I'm a little irritated that you went off to Vegas and did that, so I couldn't attend.
Well, that was the exact reason why. I was talking to Kelly. I said, how can we avoid having Cecil right there? I said, let's get out of the country. How's that sound?
Did you have a good time?
We had a great time. We had a beautiful time. And I will say this. No problems with anybody at Customs. The U.S. people were great to us. I will say that. So
good. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
But I'm still not going down there anytime in the near future.
All right, pal. Love you.
Have a good one.
Okay, pal. Take care. Cecil Wright, sports guru. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. Have yourself a great long weekend. I'd like to thank Vanessa Veinotte as well on the other side of the glass at the control board. Doing a fine job as always. We're back on Monday, 10 o'clock. See you then.